Um,
You were about 4.
we were home alone. I don't know where everybody else was, but Mom was gone. All the kids were gone. And
It's that Nelda, she was feeding you peanuts.
no, she wasn't there.
Okay.
My dad and I were walking towards the corrals in the barn, which is about 120 yards away. There's an old shack out there about 50 yards from our front door. And as we're walking across there, I think he was going to milk the cows. Anyway, a truck pulled in, pickup truck, 3 or 4 guys in front, at least 5 or 6 in the back, in the bed. And they immediately hopped out, surrounded us, and they held hands. And so they had us in a circle, and they were all holding hands. They started demanding money from my dad, and he stayed pretty calm at first, and he said, "I don't have any money, guys. You've come to the wrong place if you're looking for money." And they said, "No, we know you have a small dairy and you sell dairy products. You've got to have cash here." He said, I don't. He said, any cash I get goes into the bank and I have nothing here." And that went back and forth for about 3 or 4 minutes. And finally they said, "If you don't come up with some money for us right now, we're taking this little boy and until you pay us money." As soon as they said that, my dad said, "LaRue, run for the house." And he broke towards the house. He broke through their handhold. I ducked under it and ran. And when he broke through, he hit them both in the side of the head with his arms. And my dad was still really strong then. He was about 6'1" or 6'1 and a half, 230 pounds probably. And he came running right behind me, but I just took off as fast as I could go and ran into the house, and Dad was right behind me, and he ran in and he had his 30 loaded right inside the door. And he ran in, grabbed that, stuck it out, started firing right over their heads. He could have killed them, but he shot over their heads. They got out of there so fast. They were diving into that pickup and peeling out and going down Baseline Road. And that was amazing. I thought I told you that, but maybe not.
No, I don't recall that one.
Yeah. Maybe the one I told you was how the guy came to the door and put a knife under my dad's throat.
No.
Oh, you didn't hear that one?
No, I haven't heard that one either.
We were all home. Aunt Lynette hadn't been born yet, and I'm 5 years older than her, so it probably was just a little bit after that incident I just told. Maybe a few months later. It was a rainy night, I remember that. And a guy knocked on the door. It was dark outside. My dad went to the door, and the guy immediately stuck a hunting knife right there under my dad's chin. And he said, when he had 2 older boys with him, they were like 19 or 20, but 2 of them, I assume they were his sons. He was probably in his 40s. And he was making my dad stretch, to keep from getting cut. He did get cut a little. And he said, we just want to borrow your wife for about an hour.
Ew.
And my mom was right across the room. We had a little living room, kitchen off to the left, and then 3 bedrooms around behind. And I was off to the left of the door, and Lanny and Larry and Nelda were on the other side of the room, and Lamar was behind my mom. I'm not sure they ever saw Lamar. He would have been 12 years old. And he saw the predicament, though, and heard what the guy said. And he just vanished. The boy's bedroom was right behind him, and he just slipped in there, and they didn't even notice Lamar. He went around through the bedroom, the girl's bedroom, into my dad's bedroom. That's where his 30-30 was. And he came out with the 30-30, and he peeked out around my mom and stuck that 30-30 right toward the guy's face and said, you get out of here right now or I'm going to blow your head off. And the guy said to his boys, don't worry, he's just a little kid. He doesn't even know how to work that gun. And at that point, Lamar levered a shell into the chamber, and he said, I've killed a deer with this, and I'm going to blow your head off in about 5 seconds if you don't get out of here and leave my dad alone. And the guy said, let's go, boys. And he took off running. Lamar would have done it, too. He was very temperamental. Another 5 seconds, the guy would have lost his head.
Wow.
I think there was another story involving Aunt Nelda coming home with some kids when you were about 12 or 13,
Yeah.
seems like.
Yeah, we had moved over into the house Dad built for us, this beautiful, nice home on Val Vista, quarter of a mile south of Baseline. It's gone now, but it was a beautiful place. And I was home alone for some reason. I don't know why. Nelda was dating a guy that my mother despised him, named Buck Standiford. She eventually married him after it was her 3rd marriage, I guess, and his probably 4th. But my mom despised that guy and told her not to date him, and had all kinds of tension over that. Lamar almost beat him up one day and picked him up like this and said, you leave my sister alone. And but I was home alone, and a car pulled into our circular driveway, and a bunch of guys jumped out. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and they started running around the house, making obscene comments about Nelda, my sister. Scared me to death, though, because I could tell there was at least 6 or 8 of them. And I didn't know what to do, but I turned all the lights out so they couldn't look in any window and see me. And I got my 410. It's up there. It's a single shot 410, and I put a 410 shell in, and I had a handful of them in my pocket, and they were running around and around, yelling and screaming, awful stuff. And so I made my way from my bedroom and past the living room into the dining room, and there was French doors there. They were locked, but I unlocked the door just as they came running around the house for about the 10th time around, and they went running by, and right behind them, I cocked that 410 and shot right over their heads. Boy, they got out of there so I could hear rubber burning all the way around on our driveway. And they took off. I mentioned that to Buck Standerford after Nelda married him 40 years later, and he denied it all. I said, Buck, I know you were there. And he said, no, I wasn't. That never happened. And I also know Lamar grabbed him once and picked him up off his feet and said he was going to punch his lights out if he bothered his sister. And he said, no, that never happened. Nobody would do that to me. I said, Lamar would. Lamar had a real temper.
Oh, buddy.
Wow.
And Buck certainly lived down to his reputation.
No, that's too bad.
He was a scoundrel. Hmm.
I thought I'd told you those.
I don't recall those. No.
Did you hear the
Well,
story
there'll
about
be more. I'll keep telling them.
he crawled out into the canal when
Yes.
he was a baby?
Yeah.
That one. Holy
Uh,
cow.
those were the good old days.
The good old days.
It makes Gilbert seem like the wild, wild west.
Yeah, it does.
It kind of was.
Did you get the story about when he rode his bike around?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
off the ramp, almost
Yeah, the ramp.
crashed into a car.
That was my dad again.
He rolled the car.
I'm
Yeah.
sure he affected that.
Yeah. Well, there is something I didn't record that I kicked myself that I didn't. If you would, if you're willing to, if you don't have to, if you don't want to, but the dream you had when it was coming close to the fire,
Oh,
the big fire,
Yeah.
about Christ.
yeah.
I kicked myself that I missed that one. I
That-
should have recorded
That
it.
was right before the Rodeo Chedeskai fire, which burned up 500,000 acres here. And about 3 weeks before, I had a dream. So that would have been about the year
2002?
2000,
It was 2001.
2001. And just before it, not 2 or 3 weeks before, I went to bed just like normal. But I had a dream that I woke up and Mom was with me. She was right by my side, and we walked outside our house, and we were in just rags or sackcloth, like gunny sackcloth. And we turned back and looked. The house was just burned down. It was level. And we looked, all our trees had been burned, and the cars were just heaps of metal and melted tires. Everything was burned. And so she and I went walking. We decided to go up towards Lakeside and see what damage had been done there. And it was that way all the way. Everything had been burned down. We made it clear to Lakeside on foot. In your dreams, you cover all kinds of territory. And we saw a couple we're friends with. Do you remember who they were, Liberta? I've told you this story. It's the guy I used to really like, and his wife, Jeanette Birdno. And her husband, what's his name?
Bob?
Mike. We ran into them outside of Lakeside, and they said, you don't need to go any further. Everything's burned down. And Shola was burned down. It was just nothing. So we walked back, and we were coming along. There's a little ridge across here. And we were coming along this ridge, maybe 300 yards from where our house used to be. And some person, I don't know who he was, came running toward us. And he said, you gotta hurry. You don't want to miss him. And I said, miss who? And he said, just come and see. You won't believe this. And so we hurried and followed that person. And when we got to our property, there was an old shack back there, right where my carport is now. It's never been there, but in the dream it was there. And it hadn't been burned down. And he said, come on, hurry, hurry. And we went inside. And inside it was like general conference. There were so many people in it. It was only like a 20 by 20 little square shack. But it contained everybody I ever knew, I think. And Jesus Christ was there. That's who he said, hurry or you'll miss him. And so we went in and took our place, and he was going around the room asking everyone a question. And they were really good questions. I was trying to store them up in my mind, thinking, wow, I wonder if we'll really be asked those questions. And I was going to remember. He asked Mom a question, and I was definitely going to remember hers, because it was a super question, and she answered it real well, and he was very loving and kind to everybody that asked a question, and whatever their answer was, he found a way to compliment them. And then he turned to me after Mom's, and I was still trying to remember Mom's, and he said, LaRue, he called me LaRue. He said, and he smiled, and he said, you've recently had some criticism about the Indian Student Placement Program that you worked for decades. And he said, why, my question for you is, why did you do that? Why did you place those Indian children in LDS homes for the school year, all those years, and then you would visit the families on the reservation and visit the families during the school year that had the kids? Why did you do that? That was a lot of work. And I said, well, I thought about it for a second, and I said, I did it because we, the church, wanted to give those Indian children an opportunity to live in the predominant society so they could get an education, compete, but more importantly, learn the gospel. I said that was one reason. And the second reason was so the LDS families that took them would learn how to love somebody, not their own, but learn to love them just like their own. And he said, that's exactly right. He said, that's why I established that program. And I had just been challenged about it by a professor at San Diego State University. I was the director of the agency here. And she had written me a long letter telling me what a horrible person I was, committing cultural genocide amongst the Navajos, and they were losing their cultural identity, and they weren't losing anything except a tendency to grow up as alcoholics. But she wouldn't listen to anything I said. But that just confirmed to me that what I'd done had been his program. He said it's exactly why I established that program, and I still see his smile, and he looked a lot like that picture of him over there.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the dream. Just that simple. It meant a lot to me. I told that in a conference session up in Salt Lake a few months later. And I had some of my colleagues come up, just tears in their eyes, saying, I've always felt that was the truth, that why the Savior established it. But he said, now you've had a dream, and he's told you. It meant a lot to him. So, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I'd told you all of those.
You have told me that one before, and it means a lot to me too.
That's cool.
Yeah. Our little girl, Lynette Luckton, really benefited from it. She's a professional social worker, helps lots of people. And yeah, there were many times during my years working in that program when I would ask myself, what am I doing this for? But that helped me rationalize that a lot better. And that's what that statue on the left is all about. That's Spencer Kimball with Brother Wheeler, a former Navajo, what did they call it? Witch doctor, basically. But he joined the church. President Kimball spent a whole summer living with him.
A medicine man or something?
Medicine man. President Kimball lived with him in his hogan in Saleh for about 3 months. And I got real involved with that family. And so a good friend of mine was President Kimball's bodyguard whenever he'd come to Arizona, Lyle Tryon. And he was a Phoenix police officer. And President Kimball gave him that statue. And when Lyle moved to the valley, he gave it to me because he knew my history working under President Kimball. So,
Awesome.
so that's one of the neatest things anybody ever gave me, that right there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's real heavy. It's called the Lamanite Vision of President Kimball, and the thing it's sitting on tells about the sculpture and the vision that he had for the Lamanite people. Yeah. Well, I'll try to think of some more tonight.
You heard the other dream, right? That's kind of fun.
Which one?
You might not want to tell the whole thing, but the other dream where you're flying on an airplane.
Oh, yeah.
I did record that one.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. That